Why? Everyone's attention spans are much shorter. They just want to click the new generation and get a result. Yeah. So what we want to do, what I really want to do, is to lower the bar for people to just. This is one of the things, to experiment and see what it does, see what LaTeX does, and maybe a small percentage will say, I want to look at this code. Also, I want, if we've written a class file for a client, we want the client to modify that, change par indent. At the moment, if they want to change anything, they have to say, can you please change this, right? And if it's not quite right, go back again. We want them to do it themselves. So this is really an addition to what I said before, that we want the client to press the button.
You get loads of free extra labour. Loads of free extra labour.
Free extra labour. Let them do the work.
You make the money from selling buttons.
Correct. So we make the money from, rather than from labour, from having an interface. We're doing what Uber did to taxis, in a sense, but in the best sense. Okay, let's look at tech. Generally, tech has no structure, plain tech. You can do anything, you start writing and you can define things where you are. LaTeX also is not really structured, but it has some structure, yeah? So you start off with document class, package, etc. Then you start. That's the sort of de facto sort of structure of LaTeX. So I looked at. I tried to look at what structure there is and how we could automate this. So this is my own project. So the guys, the really clever guys, they wrote under my supervision, if you like, what you saw before. They said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, we want GUI. They said, you write the GUI. So this is my bit that I've been working on for a few years now. Style and content. Okay, just a little aside, you said why I mentioned POV-Ray. As I was thinking about this, I thought, well, there are other systems which are very similar to LaTeX, right? So POV-Ray you might know, it's a code-driven 3D image system. You can make beautiful pictures with it in 3D, truly photorealistic. And what's special about it, that it is markup. It's text, you press the button, you say, I want, this is my light, this is my second light, this is the refractive index, this is the reflectivity, etc.
This is declarative language.
Decorative language?
Not procedural.
Declarative.
Declarative, I'm sorry.
Sorry, my declaration wasn't very clear.
It's got
Although it can look very pretty.
You tell me.
It's got some procedural elements, but basically it's declarative.
Yes, you can do while loops and things like that in it.
Yeah. No, it's
quite useful because you can.
Sorry, it's a full programming language. It's like C++.
Yeah, CSS is great because it's declarative.
Okay.
Which means that people that don't know programming are much more comfortable with it.
Maybe that's why I like it, because I don't know programming. But basically, so what you write now, I looked at it, I said, hang on, at the top you're saying include colors, include textures, etc. Dot inc, just like LaTeX. And then you say what you want. So the system that I put together, I've actually used with POV-Ray as well. Just as an aside, this used to be my house. I put my whole house inside POV-Ray, okay?
Oh my God.
I'm nuts.
I did it
How
for
come?
months and gave up.
Just for fun.
Oh, right, just to see
So,
what you make later.
yeah, but you see the beams
thing.
there, the beams, all the reflectivity and the texture, etc. It's all code, right? I won't go too much into that, but basically,
Where's the old socks?
that's another style file. Okay, so for example, you can parameterize. Now, if you draw, this is our old logo. If you drew this in a, I don't know, Maya or something like that, a really professional 3D. If the client says, I want it a bit thinner, you've got to start from scratch. Here, just like in LaTeX, you can say, change one thing in your style file and it changes. So it's
this is like Metafont and Metapost, isn't it?
absolutely right, absolutely, and you can use it for Metafont as well. So just as an aside, again, my background is holography and 3D, so I wrote this thing with an animation. So this says if you change the wavelength and you change what happens to the what happens to the image. Anyway, it's an aside, but to say that it's a sort of general system I'm talking about. But I'm going to talk about the LaTeX. So what I wanted to do is to have one configuration file that I write with a GUI, and then I run tech and get a different output. So if you look at a LaTeX document class, use package. So before the begin document, you say use package with some options. Use package geometry, use package hyperref, etc., etc. Then you say begin document, and then the standard text stuff has to go after begin document. Right? So you got two places where you put stuff. But I wanted one file. So what you can do is you say, I want to say document class article, use a package river valley that's been written externally, and then rerun the file. So to do that, you say use package, geometry, use package, whatever, and then at begin document. So these will pop after begin document. Right? So this on the right is what I want to write, what I want to create externally and run the file. It'll all become clear. So the main file here is exactly the same. Then I can apply this to any files that I want. I've written my style, if you like. So the overall concept is this. You have a graphical user interface. You choose from here what you want. As you choose different options, this writes this configuration file. Use package, etc. You say what packages you want and what the different parameters are. Runs your file that you choose, and you see your output. And all this I want invisible to the user. I don't want the user to even know, at least 99%, they don't even know there's a thing called tech. Okay? So what I did, I looked at what kind of controls we have, right? The different options, they're written differently. So there's a selection type. If you want through the GUI to select something, one is, I call it choice. There's probably a more technical name for it, but it's a choice. It's either portrait or landscape or something else, right? There's another thing called choice, which actually is a color. You want to choose a color. I don't know, I've got hyperref, I want the links to be this color or that color. Just categorizing different things. There's a number which might have a unit or may not have a unit. It might be, I don't know, hyphen penalty something, or it might have a unit. Then there's a toggle, on or off. Yeah, I want, ragged right on or off. That's one way of categorizing controls. Just go through this, then I'm going to show you a demo. It'll all become clear. Then there's, how do you write this in? Well, again, there are four different things. One is an option. Portrait. One is an option, but has a value. Link color equals red. That's another kind of option you can have. Option with a value. Okay, so for example, choice color. It's a choice color, but it's option with value. This one, you choose a number, but you write it as option with value. Okay, so it could be any combination. This one is a toggle, but you write it as an option, as the top one. Okay, so by categorizing, now we can have a GUI to choose whatever we want in any of the style files. What do we need in here? We need the name of the control. So orientation equals that, paper equals that. This is what we want to write in our style file, in our River Valley in our configuration file. You want a list of choices there. There's a default value. So when you start, what's the default? It's a sort of, I want to list these up first. There's a minimum maximum value. If you have a pop-up button, what's the increment? So if you want, I don't know, H size, you want 1 millimeter increments. It's a sort of something you decide. Default unit. And to prevent having lots of these on a page, you want to have them in groups that you can close and open. Okay? So, a GUI, you can have lovely GUIs, but they're fixed. You go into Photoshop, you can't create a new button. You'd love to have a button to say a combination of brightness and contrast. But if Adobe decide you don't have it, you don't get it. So I want to be able to write my GUI. To create my GUI, I need a style file for that GUI. I need to describe what I want for that GUI. Okay? And for that, I want a file, either separately or within a style file, a data file, what I call a data file. So for a geometry, right now, if you look at geometry.sty, you have to read it and understand it and then decide, I want to change this variable and I want it to, right? It's a human readable, it's not machine readable. It'd be nice to have a structure so that a machine can go and say, yeah, I've loaded geometry and here are your controls. Okay? Now if we have that would be actually good just for documentation. So what we want is a machine-readable documentation of a style file, which at the moment we don't have in general. Maybe we can generate that dynamically from the DTX file. I don't know, but I think that's a possibility. What format do we want this style sheet to be in? JSON, XML, LaTeX, YAML. We want it simple, we want it human-readable. Ideally, we want human writable as well. So I looked at YAML, for example. It's nice. It's very simple. I looked at several things. Then I decided on a tab separated spreadsheet, if you like. Tab separated. I tried comma separated values, but I don't know who came up with comma separated.
They didn't understand how the French write their numbers.
Yeah, there we are. I mean, who would put comma in there? Anyway, so I've got now, basically I said, right, I'm going to say, create, so I've described here, for example, for this might be geometry. I've got a group called page, it's in page. The paper description is paper size, that's to help people, it's a tooltip. Selection type is a choice. Output form is option with value. Position is option. A position is either option, which is just after document class, or it's at begin doc, etc. Value, minimum, maximum. Yeah? So from this, we can create a GUI. And then use that GUI to create. Right. So that is the theory. And I'm going to give you a demo. May I? I'm going to do that anyway, whether you like it or not, guys. Okay. So, let me close this. Right. This is the GUI. Right now, I have, this is my main file. Get rid of that. I don't know what that is. Okay. So, I have now controls.style loaded. Controls is the basic things in tech. It's whatever is in plain tech I've put in here that I might want to change. Let me look at the data file for this. This is the data file, right, for controls. I'm saying top line is the heading, control group. Hyphenation, I got hyphen penalty, description, hyphen penalty or not, etc., etc. This file allows me to create the GUI. So when I say reload package, that reads that file and creates for me this automatically on the fly. Okay? Let me see if I can. I'm going to put in hyphenation. I'm going to put the name as Jonathan. Okay? Save. Let's see if that works. I didn't practice this. Reload. And we've got Jonathan.
What value of Jonathan do you want?
Well, we can talk about that later. Okay. So now we've got this here.
Oh, so this could be internationalized.
Yeah. This basically it's reading what you've got here. This could be this is a text file that I read and I create my GUI. Okay? I've got a button here, immediate or delayed. If it's delayed, that means don't run tech immediately. Wait, because I got some changes to make. Let me just make some changes here. Let's look at the config file. Config file is what the system is writing. Okay? This is what it's writing. So you've got use package, controls, at begin document, put all these things in. If I change hyphen penalty from 50 to 2380, you see it changes here immediately. Yeah? And if I don't want hyphen penalty there at all, I can remove it and it'll be commented out. Okay? So it's a quick way. I'm sorry? Yeah, but it's not in there. I'm saying.
Shouldn't the interface tell you what value it's got if it's not there? In case otherwise you won't know if you want to change it, will you?
What I'm saying is, okay, this is the value that's in the file. If I switch this off, it has no value. It's got the default value of tech. That's it. I'm saying.
But it's important what that default value is, isn't it?
Only if you put it in, yeah. No, I can have a button here saying put defaults. Okay. So now, if I say immediate, every time I click on this, it actually runs tech and opens, okay, geometry. There. So that's a PDF. It's running PDF tech. So I can say, if I change that, it's run that again. Immediate. Okay, let's go to paragraphs. H size. Reduce H size. What did I change that it's not running? There we go. Yeah.
Skim feature.
Yeah, it's a skim thing. It wasn't auto. Right. So now, as I change this, it's changing, and I found that this is actually useful for if we go to, for example, math. Things that I never thought about. So, for example, you got, okay, let's have a look now. Here you've got a relation, yeah, that's broken. Now you can see rel penalty. Let's see, if I rel penalty 10,000, then it won't break ever. Yeah. If I rel penalty minus 10,000, it always, every single time, it'll break. And I found that things like script. Does anyone know what script space is? You do?
Yes.
Oh, you geek.
If you write a package about units that involves superscripts, you will soon find out
Okay.
these things.
Well, I haven't done such. So but basically, you can try it here, and you can see.
Yourself a typesetting.
It puts a space after superscripts or subscripts. Okay.
Usually wrong space. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, just to, I wasted a bit of time. Now, I want to load a style file, right? Manage styles, add style file. What do you want? Geometry. Okay? I happen to have written, you need that geometry.data. You need to know what buttons to need. So I've created my own geometry data file that says geometry, these are the things I want to change in there. Okay? This loads, finds geometry.data, and adds these in. Just to show you how it does, if I go slow-mo and say reload package, what it's doing is, yeah, so it's reading that spreadsheet. For each bit, creates the buttons, right, on the fly, and puts them in here according to the values, the options, etc. So I'm creating the GUI on the fly. So I switch that off. So now I've got geometry loaded. So I can go to controls, change things. I can go to geometry. Now geometry, it doesn't, once you're in geometry, you don't need all the things in controls outside. So I'm going to switch off controls. Now I can say paper width, etc. Yeah. So basically you can play around, H offset, etc. And we've got now, I've got a thing called, we wrote a style for progress bar at the bottom of the page. Progressive, so add progressive, yeah. Now progressive likes to be loaded last, so this is my favorite bit. I can just do this, and that goes at the bottom. So now, let's have a look at our config file. Our config file has, I've switched off controls, it has geometry and progressive. So whatever you load, it goes into here. So this is the file I'm writing, and it's loading, right? So this is my progress bar. I go here and I say, so we have chosen these particular things for progressive. I want a bit more width here, and let's say the height is 6, and let's say there's a curvature. I'll put a curvature of 3 around the edge. This is ticks. It's a ticks style file, and we said for the full bar I want color. There's a full color. I'm going to switch that off. I've got a top color, mid color, bottom. So the top is red. The mid is again red but a bit darker, like that, and we'll put the bottom as black. So you can basically, it allows you to do these things. The empty bar I can fill as well. Page numbers, yes, I want page numbers. I want them to page position to be to the right. I want the total page number as well. And I want the, whatever you choose you can put in here. So this is up to the designer to put in. So the idea is that the hard bit, of course, a class file writer still has to write, right? The progress bar, someone has to write progressive.style. But you say, these are the things you can change. Here's my data file. And you just load it, you change things, you end up with a big, huge file with all the options. That can be sent to anyone, and it's a standard LaTeX file. So this is, if you like, our plug-in to the system you saw before, so that the client doesn't have to come to us to say, look, I want to change a font, etc. The designers can move around and say, yeah, save this, and any time I can say, save this, this particular combination. That's my GUI. Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Nice up lights.
Go ahead.
Pretend you're making a pitch to your chief executive officer, who is me.
Yes.
And the question I ask you is, how does this help us against our competitors? In particular, who is our competitor that gives us an advantage against?
This particular thing?
Yeah.
Well, this not quite. Okay, this particular thing allows you to design your own books. If you have a new book coming out, okay, you can design. You can decide on the design, and you don't have to. Okay, put this together with that. Supposing you've got that end-to-end system. Not only are you writing.
Who's the competitor? Other typesetting companies? Does this give you an advantage over other typesetting companies, or over Word, or over InDesign, or where?
Wouldn't it be fair to say that the competitor is your user ploughing through 600 pages of assorted obscure style file manuals?
No, because what I'm thinking here, everything I've said here is for the 99%, the people who don't use tech at all.
Right.
Right? The question is not who the competitor is. The question is giving you, Mr. CEO, the advantage of designing in-house and immediately pressing the button and having your book to your design. Because if you didn't have that, what would you do? You'd have an in-house designer who designs in InDesign, say.
Mm-hmm.
You send that off to someone, a PDF, to outside. You say, can you please set this book to the design we've sent you? They send you a proof. They say, no, this is not quite right. Can we have this a little bit less than that? You do this in-house. So the whole process is faster, Mr. CEO. Believe me.
And your design is cheaper.
Your design, well,
Less expensive.
Depending on how much coverage choice we're giving.
it's fast. Hang on, yeah, it might be cheaper because that designer in InDesign still has to design. That's time is still spent. Here, you spend the time, and then you have. In fact, you'll be able to see at the same time that the author is writing. At the other end, your design comes up.
So I can see that companies that typesetting companies that adopt a technology such as this have a market advantage.
Yes, exactly. If they take this, they're competing against typesetters. The publishers are not competing against typesetters. The publishers are competing against other publishers.
Yeah.
So they have the advantage of faster of designing their own style file. Don't even call it a style file, they know it's tech. Their own template for their content.
According to classical economic theory, publishers benefit from competition between typesetters. Competition between typesetters is for the benefit of publishers. Competition between publishers is for the benefit of authors, etc.
Banks are a good thing, yes. Okay.
Yeah, in principle, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
The bank I think can certainly ways.
I'm just doing that classical economics.
so this is for the benefit of publishers, and it is a competitive aspect of typesetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all. I'm just saying.
Yeah. In fact, we use this in-house, right? So right now, if we've got class file writers are hard to find. A good class file writer. So we say, look, mate, we got 1-2 geeks, really good guys who write class files. We say, you write the class file. Don't worry about the details. Just give me the controls, because I can sit and play around until I've got just the right progress bar, and I'm happy with that.
So this is like CSS. This is
Yes.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right.
In web development,
You're absolutely right.
you have a separation in the web development framework. The people that produce the HTML,
You're absolutely right.
They're done in different places.
Yes.
Even if they're done by the same person, they're done in different places because they're different concerns.
Yes. Yeah.
So this is something like a CSS interface.
Yeah, it's separating the content and the
Pick up on a sort of fairly detailed point about all the files flying around, which had come across in other places where LaTeX classes are being, shall we say, processed by other systems than LaTeX itself. It would be nice to have a way of actually producing, putting the data you want for this in the style file.
Yeah, that's the bit.
At least.
I don't know enough about that, but I really want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of our job, really.
Yeah.
Only if
I don't care.
I really want.
I'm in the union.
It's not our job to annotate all the stuff files so Categorize
No, but
internal systems work.
No, hang on, no. This should be a.
have all that very similar data. If he decides an interface.
Yeah.
This is a general. Yeah, in general, we've got what? How many class files are there? 1,000 style files?
I mean,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is this is a general problem.
This
It's
is a
not-
general,
it's not
exactly.
specific
That
than what you're
I
doing.
don't want to lock people into this. Yeah, I want to produce the best GUI, but let's have, if someone writes a style, okay, for example, hyperref, right? Fantastic. Huge amount of possibilities. But, you know, there's no systematic documentation of these are the controls, and perhaps according to, for a book, this is the minimum value, that's the maximum value, etc. Because I could use that in here, someone else can use that, and you might, the whole thing is machine readable.
Can you magic cook here? Do magic, magic comments rather.
Say it again?
In your style file,
Yeah.
you have magic comments, which then you look at.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can read and then
Yeah.
grab,
Well,
grab
You
stuff.
don't
That's-
need magic comments.
No, no, no,
You
no.
just need part of the style file to be more or less matching up.
Exactly.
You
What
don't
I want
need-
from you guys
Yeah,
is
that's-
what's the best way of do you put it at the end? Is it LaTeX? Is it tech? Is it DTX file? You're the guy.
That's details. I mean, the hard part actually is sitting down with you and
Working out
working
what.
out what. I mean, you can choose what kind of controls you've got.
Yeah.
And therefore you can choose which packages you put in that system. It's more when you look over the range of packages that are on CTAN. You know, some of them have integer values that you're setting.
Yeah.
Some of them just redefine 3/4 of the underlying LaTeX system and make things happen differently. And they're much harder to control.
Yeah.
So you need a way of you need to specify what the ground rules are for what kinds of control you can support. I mean, the details of where you put where you put it in the file is
Okay.
the details.
If you're a class file, right? Suppose you've written the best person is the guy who's just written a style file. Let's not say a class file.
He's writing it.
He's right, exactly. You're writing a style file, you think, hang on, we need to be able to change the color of this. You're the best person to document that. That's a button, right? And what is it? It's a choice button, or whatever the more techie way to call it. I've just called it, what I could imagine. And maybe a minimum maximum. Now, however, that you could have more than one set of values. Someone else can come and say, here you are, this is a good set for publishing textbooks. This is good for journals, this is good for something else, but all use this package. That's something yeah.
I mean, what the thing that most reminds me of is sometime last century, scientific
You're
work.
aging yourself there. Yeah, go on.
So scientific work had a GUI for doing basically exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And given it was last century, it worked remarkably well.
Yeah.
The main disadvantage with it that people found in the end was it was dismissed to you, and it was writing out all the parameters and things that it knew about. But it became very fragile. I mean, you end up with this hundreds, I can't remember how many, an awfully large amount of data tech settings were inserted into the file. And because it basically got frozen, if somebody then said, I want to load ticks or any other package got written 10 years later, actually because of this metadata wasn't there, what tended to happen if you load some other packages is that the whole thing just,
Okay.
it couldn't cope with, if you write the whole thing and the only use package that you knew about, it's sort of okay. But if you load another package, say the package can change the ground rules.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's reading the data on the fly. You choose what you want to put in there. You switch off what you don't want. You could have a minimum value. Oh, by the way, we can have a switchalizer, but there's a little friendly mode here. If I roll over any of these, there's a tool tip, and you can change the values. You can't see it. So you can make it more friendly. So you don't even see, color top. You see the color of the top of the bar.
I've got an example. Something similar happens in programming. I've seen it in Python, where you want to write a command line program that takes certain options with certain values and stuff like that. And you have these packages called opt parcels, that sort of thing, similar to the key value packages you have in LaTeX that provide you a parsing mechanism. And I saw a brilliant presentation, I can't remember the person's name, where he said, the present packages are broken, here's how we can do it. In Unix, you have in the man page, for every well-formed command line program, you have a description of how it works, of a syntax description of what the options are, and you simply parse that and use that as the specification. So in your code, you say, here are the options, here's the doc string for the Unix, for the command line, and you use the command line, and then you parse that and process that in order to understand how to process the arguments that are actually coming in. Now, what you've got here is data that is specified, that defines the interface, and what you really want is a way of converting that into something that allows the communication to take place. So as far as the person's writing the package is concerned, he sets up some information similar to the information you've got there. In fact, he sets up the information that you've got there. And that is translated into tech code that precisely does the parsing that's needed. So you don't worry at all about all the argpart stuff to passing information to the package. You let this define the interface to the package. That's the only thing the package needs to do, is have an interface that respects this. If you want to combine various packages, you want a way of sort of cascading together various selection tools. So you say, okay, we're going to use this package and this package and this package, and we maybe want to retain a proportionality between various quantities, if that's the way you want to do it. Have I made myself clear?
No, because I'm not clever enough. You're talking above me.
I think I can see what you're aiming at, Jonathan. I mean, that's quite a challenge.
In other words, you let this system be the driver. That's the key idea. If you want something that works, if you want to do command line options, you say, here's the documentation string for the command line options, and you let that drive the whole thing. So that all you need is to say, here's the documentation string for the command line options, and then you ensure that you fulfill that correctly. Similarly, you say, this is the interface you're providing, so you spit out this material in some way that tech can understand, and it's then the responsibility of the package to process it.
But that means more work for the package
There
writer,
wouldn't
is
be
that
any
right?
material if there wasn't a package to begin with.
Well, there wouldn't be a package if there wasn't a
You're
user.
sort of talking about one universal package, aren't you?
Anyway.
That just picks up parameters from there and a description and produces the tech code internally to do the job.
If somebody is not a style file wizard,
You don't
they
know
need
what
to
the
adjust
parameters
parameters.
are,
That's
do you?
exactly
Yes.
what you want.
Yeah.
The semantics in the style.
Sorry?
You don't know what the parameters are or what nature they are until you've got the semantics that uses them in the style file, package file, whatever it's called.
So what's the source for the generation of these buttons then?
There is a gap.
Well, that's the table.
Yeah, but how do you get from?
Yeah.
But once
No,
you're
no, no.
starting, what files? Are you
Where is that
starting
coming
with?
from? I want that table. Someone's just written a style file, right?
No. What I'm saying is, somebody before they write a style file, they have a tool that allows them to take a table like yours
Okay.
and build from it the interface, the style interface.
That's just a key. But that's just a
This
key value
is-
interface. But you need to define the keys. That's the point.
Yes.
Somebody has to first define the key.
Which is basically what I said earlier on, which is a mic solution. I would say use magic comment in your style file. Style class file in order that then when Kaveh's thing looked at it and then find out what buttons
It's completely different.
Yeah, what Jonathan is saying, I think, if you're excuse me, is sort of yak plus bison for tech.
Yeah.
So therefore, that means, of course, we have to write our style files.
It's just animals as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, sorry,
No, what it means is that from this document here, you generate a stub.
This document, what do you mean?
The
The interface, the GUI.
table.
Oh, from that table.
From that table, you generate a stub.
You generate a style file header which has got all the parameters and then a little section of code for each parameter.
Yeah.
However, where does this come? Look, this says height, color, height of bar, number, etc. Where is that coming from to begin with?
No, I'm reversing the order of the
Okay.
cart and the horse.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, sorry?
It says it doesn't work, but the cart before the horse.
No, I didn't say that I was putting them in any particular order. I was saying I was reversing them to make it work better.
Yes, there's only two choices of order.
I think you're attacking the wrong problem then.
So,
The hard part is doing the classification.
What I'm saying is you start with the style file author starts with this. Style file author starts with the file like this.
Yeah.
No, it can be empty.
Well, you start with the design specification.
Let me finish that.
The
Yes.
style file author
Yes.
starts with something
Yes.
like this.
Yes.
From it,
Yes.
a tool generates tech code. He then knows.
That's a different meaning.
He then knows
Mhm.
that when your tool is used, it generates the correct material in the style file to set the parameters that he's expecting to have.
Again, that's just key balancing. All he's saying is you've got some keys and you've got a different assignment. That's just X template or whatever.
That's a key. I mean,
So-
You're talking about turning one line.
No,
Use your favourite tool
no,
to do it.
because the thing
If you
is,
like comma separated, use that.
there's these outputs are option with value and that sort of thing.
There's no extra. That's all basically done.
Or some kind
What do
of
you mean it's all
XML
done?
You can specify an
That's
interface.
LV key.
Always a full
Yeah,
line.
but the style file, all the style file designer
Because you
needs
chose
to
this one,
do,
I'll come find you
Is to fill in the gaps, basically.
all the style file designer needs to do is to take this, write this,
style file. That's the problem.
is to write this information down here,
Yes.
run a script.
You don't need a run script.
This is not tech readable.
Yes,
Right?
It is.
Well, in that case, a tech tool does it.
Yeah,
I don't
tech
care
tool
what
does,
tool
not
it is. But the essential thing is
We'll just show enough to look.
that given the right options in the top style file, the document style file, given the correct options in the document style file, as produced by this tool, the outputs are transferred into something that the style file can then use.
Yeah, but that stage could be empty. Because that's you just read the same file. So there's nothing there. The hard part is making the table, and the fact that most of the code of a typical style file, take hyperref. I mean, here you're setting a few of the options. All the code of hyperref is not related to the options. It's related to actually doing hyperref.
Absolutely.
So,
But it's no point writing hyperref if people can't use it. And that's the problem that Kaveh has, is that people can't use it. The style files are too complicated for people to understand and read, Kaveh says, and a GUI interface like this does the job.
Okay, there must be a.
missing the point.
You're far too clever to make a silly remark. So there's no. I think there's a communication problem because
Absolutely.
I think we got to offline. Maybe we should.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see.
The catalyst is which way of expressing the configuration, the
Well,
options
yeah,
that we're going to choose.
Well, that's the one that.
So Chris and I, and you and Jonathan will all choose different methods to do the same thing.
You can do what you like.
Then we can
all I
explain what we which is the right one.
Okay, from my point of view, someone's written a style file, and so I've heard that there's a style file. Actually, what I want is to choose a style file. It goes to CTAN or wherever. It gets that, loads it.
What gets that?
Right, my GUI, I'm going to have the same. Right, the GUI here. Someone's written, I don't know, Rowley.style, and they say, oh, you must use this. Okay, so I choose Rowley.style. Now, Rowley.style will be on TechLive or CTAN, right? It can see that. It grabs Rowley.data, puts all the parameters in there, yes, and then I can just use it. it's been done. All I'm saying, from my point of view, from my point of view, I want to get to that point. Now, how you guys get to that point?
Listen to me then. What I said is you don't actually necessarily need a separate file.
Okay, fine, fine. Get it. Absolutely, even better.
Which is not a style file.
No. Even better.
We're not talking about the actual values here, Jonathan.
Yeah.
To solve Kaveh's problem, if there's a Rowley.sty, Kaveh wants a Rowley.data.
Yes.
Which could be embedded.
Which could be embedded, exactly. Even better, it could be at the bottom of the style file, right?
STY2DAT.sh.
It could be anywhere. I can, as long as I can extract it.
So what you want is a ctan.data that contains the data files for the style files, and
where it doesn't matter where they are. Yeah, exactly.
He said there's no Rowley.dat because actually because Chris never got round to writing it.
But the point is.
Because he didn't know he wanted to, or because he hadn't invented yet.
The point is that the author of Rowley.sty and Rowley.data could be entirely different people.
Mm-hmm. There could be.
Yeah.
And you might have 10 different. You might have 10 different. You might have 10 different ones because out of say Hyperref's got 200 options. I only want 5 of them. I only want 10 of them.
Okay.
And my values might be different for different markets.
That might be up to you to select the bits you want.
Maybe.
But that bit of the style file still have everything. Yeah. Better.
It would be best.
But one was a good start. Having a standard one would be a good start. Yeah.
So all you need is a place. If you have a place where these data files can be stored, and you just add to this place when you need them, and if other people are using the system, they will add to it also.
We could crowdsource this.
But there is already around some actual code that could be used in automating some of this because it can read package files and do interesting things with them.
Kaveh doesn't care about the automation of the generation of the data files. He only cares. He only cares about the existence.
I mean, it's the same with any third-party data. If it's not the author of the package writing it, if CTAN had 1,000 data files for 1,000 packages that we contribute to, for packages that are being maintained and updated by the authors, the data files will be useless within a couple of years.
Okay.
Hang on. If the data files are useless in a couple of years, it means that you don't have stability in your typesetting system.
Well, that's why CTAN announced 50 updates per month, where people tinkering with stuff.
But generally speaking, they don't take away parameters; they add them.
But the problem is you want a way of automating the generation of. It's like a type system, like a type system that can deduce from the code what these options are. So
that's why Magic Comments is the best way because there's inside that particular style file.
If that is your definition of if that defines your code, which is where you can quite happily have your code read that and set up a load of key values, right? And then you don't need comments because it's the actual thing that the code that does it. You've still got an extra line then that you have to remember to update.
But if you have it in the .sty file, if you have it encoded in somewhere in a .sty file, then actually they only have to download one style file and.
It has to be deduced.
Yeah, hang on. The style file has got 2 bits to it, doesn't it? It has the bit where you parse the parameters and set up the variables, and then there's another bit that does the actual work.
Template again. So then they could be commands that could.
Yeah, but you'll only have one version in each version of each download of Tech Live. You'll only have one copy of that style file. Whereas if you've got a separate DAT, they could actually wander apart. Was the last time you edited your .sty, hopefully, you remembered to update the options, the GUI options list.
Integrity. Yeah, but there is a social problem. You can't.
Or you didn't.
Because you didn't bother on. What about your own DAT file that you've developed lovingly to suit your parameters and the things that you want to do? That's the thing I think that Kaveh was focusing on, was that different people could have different DAT files.
Well, and they could be stored locally.
Well,
So you could take one and then store locally.
I think once you've got to the point of having DAT files, you combine them together, like combine chapters into a book, and say, okay, there's actually 3,000 parameters underneath here. We're going to provide 20 controls for manipulating all of these parameters.
Well, that's like sort of
It's going to mess up my system, though, isn't it? Because I've got each style separated.
No, it just changes the generation.
Okay.
Okay. So you have maybe 1,000 you're spitting out 1,000 parameters at the end, but you only provide, say, half a dozen controls because they're the only ones you want to expose, and you say that certain relation. As in Metafont, you have perhaps 40 parameters for a font that you vary, and then they vary a large number of other parameters. So you have 40 or 50 parameters for your style file, and you say, okay, I want the baseline width, I want the baseline separation to be a certain amount, and then that adjusts all manner of other things, such as the size of all the other fonts. You might just say, this is the master dimension for the font, and all the other ones are controlled in a particular way.
There's all sorts of extra sophistication in most general case, although Kaveh's idea is good for the basic setup, because a lot of, I'll say a lot, even to some extent, a lot of the current LaTeX, but certainly a lot of the one that might appear one day, will have a lot of context-dependent values for parameters. I mean, okay, you can think of those in Kaveh's setup as in some sense of another parameter.
Didn't Memoir?
But you have to have somewhere people knowing what they're setting. Perhaps more sophisticated than this.
Doesn't Memoir do something?
There's one mapping which gets a bit nasty, I think. Well, something that's simple like H size might appear in more than one style file.
Yeah, but that's why.
Which one's over?
Well, here I've said. Oh.
Well, in the value or the use?
Yes.
Because the one that takes prep will actually be used as the last package that got loaded to fiddle with it.
Sorry, it's the same. It's the package clashing which we have now.
That's why I put.
We didn't think after the comment. Only multiple packages has a lot more.
What Kaveh wants to do is produce a separation of concern. So you have the person who is an expert in the style files, and they do the work to set things up, so that the other person, who is an expert in design, can adjust the parameters to meet the needs of the customer.
Yes, it might be that Kaveh's approach here is illustrative, but it's not high level. Like maybe you want to, rather than setting the page width and the height, you just want to set the proportion. Or the
you can do that too. Yeah.
Oh yes,
yeah,
but,
exactly.
But I'm saying a more, I hate to use the word holistic approach to, for example, the page layout.
So in this sense, it's a bit like Metafont. I mean, there's a classic thing in Metafont where the font varies character by character from one style to another in the course of an article. And what the part of the real skill is to say these are the 20 parameters that whose variation defines all the books are going to be printing and all the journals. These are the 20 or 30 parameters.
Yes, a sort of platonic prototype.
Yeah. So what, in a sense, what you want to do is reduce it to about. Well, how many controls does a helicopter pilot have?
Lots.
Not that many.
Sometimes they
I bet he has less than Memoir.
Yes, there we go.
Right. I think let's try Simon's.
We give Simon a round. Kaveh and Simon a round.